whilst 90% of the population would enjoy a state-subsidized life of leisure, raking in an annual income of $40,000 or around $375,000 in today's money, all for doing precisely bugger all. I'm f***ing waiting! Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Brain Blaze. As always, I'm your host Simon. Welcome to the show. I'm here with my writer, Danny, has written me a script. Weirdest predictions about the future that never came true. What we're going to do is we're just going to... I lost where I was. Hello everybody, welcome back to a new episode. Hello everybody, welcome to bed. I'm sorry, Sam. We'll get there eventually.
One eternity later.
Hello everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of Brain Blaze. This episode is, what am I doing? Why am I suddenly just breaking into an ad read? It's not where this goes. What are you doing, Packed Boy? Strangest predictions about the future that didn't come true. This episode written by Danny. The format of the show, if you're new here, is Danny writes me a script. I'm going to react to it. I've never read it before. Let's just jump in. Strange alchemy. Depending on your perspective, Thomas Edison is either a genius inventor or a ruthless patent profiteer. Honestly, why can't you be both? Or perhaps just a smart business guy who specializes in improving existing inventions and turning them into something that might make some money. Honestly, legend. Back in 1911, the Miami metropolis certainly viewed Thomas Edison. That's right, Thomas. I was like, Thomason? As the right man to predict what life would be like in the 21st century during an interview with the inventor/cutthroat businessman. And fair play, he did have a fair few light bulb moments. Thomas correctly predicted that it's so weird calling him Thomas. Can't we just call him Edison? It's like Thomas Edison. Hey, Tomo!
Thomas had never seen such bullshit before.
Tomo correctly predicted that electricity would largely replace steam as the power source for trains, and he almost kind of predicted the rise of the e-reader. Well, not quite. He didn't exactly envision that books would be stored on electronic devices. Instead, he reckons that the books of the future would be printed on ridiculously thin pages produced from nickel leaves, enabling a 2-inch book to contain as many as 40,000 pages. That just sounds like it's going to be a night, like turning the pages, you'd be like, no, that's 2 pages. No, that's 7 pages. Okay, we got it. There we go. That sounds like a right pain in the arse, to be honest. It also sounds heavy.
That just sounds like slavery with extra steps.
He didn't get the format right, but at least he figured out that he'd be able to walk around whilst carrying hundreds of books without breaking your back. Some of his other predictions were a bit wide of the mark, though. I'm sorry, but that nickel book or whatever, that is not a fucking e-reader or like reading books on your phone or whatever. That's just, he got it wrong, Danny. Why are you like, hey, basically, yep. You could say like, oh yeah, he predicted the e-reader. How? I printed microfiche, like printing really small and just carrying around a microscope. That's the same thing. That's the same thing as saying he invented the e-reader by just saying, print it really small. Come on, Danny. You're taking in by Edison's garbage. That f***ing patent troll. Some of his other predictions were a bit wide of the mark, though. But it's possible that the ever-shifty Edison... you wrote Thomas, Danny, but I'm calling him Edison. It's too weird to call him Thomas. May have been hiding an ulterior motive behind his crystal ball fantasies. Edison declared that gold was shortly to reach the end of its shelf life as a precious metal. In fact, he was confident that within just a few years from his 1911 interview, gold would be as common and cheap as bars of iron or blocks of steel. I thought you were a good businessman, Thomas. Have you not heard of supply and demand? It's like the supply of gold is low. The supply of iron, fairly substantial. It's not going to happen like aluminium. There was like back in the day, the kings and were like, oh, aluminium plates, because they could only find it in nature. And then they found a way to make aluminium in like labs using, I want to say electrolysis. This reminded me of like high school chemistry. But that's not going to happen with gold. And we've known that for a long time. Alchemists have been trying to figure that out for a long time. They have not succeeded. His reasoning was that we were on the verge of becoming master alchemists with the power to turn base metals into gold at the drop of a hat. Edison believed in alchemy. Okay. Thomas? Okay, I'm just going to go with it because otherwise I'm going to screw it up so many times. All right, Danny, you win. Thomas felt that in the imminent future, it would be a piece of piss to turn a truckload of iron bars into as many bars of virgin gold. The thinking may have been influenced by the decline of gold at the time, and it's certainly true that the gold standard, the monetary system in which a country's currency is directly linked to gold, would soon be on the way out. That's absolutely nothing to do with it. Those are two completely different things. One is about its practical use, and the other is about one is chemistry and one is economics. What are you talking about? Why would you? Edison surely didn't think this because, he didn't have a tiny brain. It's also true that scientists have been dabbling with the concept of artificial transmutation and have even technically created new gold, although the whole process is so long-winded and ridiculously expensive that the outcome is a bit like proudly creating a new $5 note from the shredded remains of a massive pile of $100 notes. Oh, Danny, it's beyond that, mate. The cost of making 1 gram of gold is unbelievable. It would be like shredding a warehouse of $100 notes. So gold is still very much a precious metal, and we're about a century overdue for the scene dreamed up by Thomas, in which we're all riding about in golden taxicabs, drinking from golden solo cups, and reading out scripts from golden teleprompters. Danny, please. All of my teleprompters are golden. However, I bought them at Trump.com.
Still alive, still breathing, sharing a pitiful crust between them.
However, when it came to your house, Thomas figured that the people of the future would choose cheap steel over cheap gold, as the former is more durable and flexible. Yeah, having a car made out of gold's insane. Gold's ridiculously heavy. I held a gold brick, and that is so small, and it's so heavy. It's crazy. He mentioned that houses would not only be constructed entirely from steel, they would also be furnished in wall-to-wall steel. That sounds a bit over the top, doesn't it? He was really getting a bit carried away with this idea. In his own words, the house of the next century will be furnished from basement to attic with steel at 1/6 of the present cost. Yeah, but Tomo, no one's going to want their house. What's that bed made of? Steel. And the sheets? Steel. So, what the... The baby of the 21st century will be rocked in a steel cradle. His father will sit in a steel chair at a steel dining table, and his mother's boudoir will be sumptuously equipped with steel furnishing. Yeah, but you could look at a steel thing and be like, that's nice. You know what's nicer? Wood. Whilst we're using a bit more steel than we did back in his day, we're not quite wrapping ourselves in steel blankets in the way that Thomas suggested. But here are a few points to consider, which may or may not be purely coincidental. As Thomas was predicting a future of electric trains, he was already the owner of several hydroelectric power stations. And that's what we call a conflict of interest. Let's ask Edison what he thinks is going to be the future. All of my business interests. All of them. All of them. I also have a big steel mill. Let me tell you about steel blankets. As Thomas was predicting a future of books printed on nickel leaves, he was in the process of patenting a method for mass-producing nickel leaves. He was? Oh, no, surely not. Brilliant. Big brain business dude. And as Thomas was predicting a future draped in steel, he was making a huge investment in his son's new steel manufacturing business. Shocking. It sounds as if crafty Thomas was more concerned about growing his own bank account today than making accurate predictions for tomorrow. At least he refrained from suggesting that we'd all be driving around in giant incandescent light bulbs, wrinkly humans with nothing to do. One good thing about making silly predictions about the distant future is that at least you're not going to be alive to face the embarrassment of being proven completely wrong in 100 years' time. Unless you live to be incredibly old, of course. But the Californian biologist Bernard Strehler made an unusual short-term prediction back in 1974, which, funnily enough, was about living to an incredibly old age. Does anyone remember that movie, 2012, with John Cusack? 2012? 2002? Something like that. And it was like, the movie was released in 2011. It's like, why didn't you name it 2022 or 2023 to at least give us some distance? Because I remember seeing that movie and being like, it did happen, did it? John Cusack. We don't need to be living in arcs, John. Bernard declared, I know John Cusack didn't write the movie, he just starred in the movie, but he's the face I associate with the prediction being wrong. It's your fault, John.
No.
Really?
No.
Really?
Swear to God.
Bernard, or Bernard, if you're British, declared that society needed to be prepared for humans reaching a 150-year lifespan by the end of the century, a small step of just 26 years into the future. I'm not sure what we were supposed to prepare for. He may have been talking about potential overpopulation, a declining the grave digging industry, or the need to remember to keep on buying birthday presents for your older, still not dead relatives. He was talking about overpopulation. He was. And the inability of the social support system to support that many old people. So that, well, I don't know, just put them in the mines. Just you're 120. You got a good 30 years left to get in the mines. It'd be like, your retirement's over. Back to work. You didn't think about this. But it wasn't a new point. A strikingly similar idea had been floated much earlier in the 1930 book, The World of 2030 AD by F.E. Smith, who at least had the foresight to give himself a much bigger window of time. I'll be like, cool. Let's assume I live to 90, generously. This is my healthy lifestyle. Cool. Work out how far that is in the future and then make predictions beyond that point. Hey, F.E. Smith, let's call him by his first name of Frederick. Danny, why are we doing this? It's so, awkward. He's doing it on purpose. Was no crackpot fortune teller. He was a leading British lawyer. Ah, yes, lawyers, the people we always go to for futurology. Futurism? Futurism. The first Earl of Birkenhead, a former Lord High Chancellor and a good buddy of Winston Churchill. So it was quite remarkable to hear such an influential and respected figure talking about a world in which humans would live to be 150 years old. Frederick felt that by the year 2030, we'd all have cured cancer and other life-threatening diseases. Oh, only 7 more years. Can't wait. And we would be nudged along to the age of 150 with the help of mysterious rejuvenating injections. He considered this to be... He's like, yeah, get that boy blood. He considered this to be a good thing, but warned of grave problems, which is an odd choice of phrase in this case. It's literal grave problems. Ba-da-bum-bum. Frederick pondered, how will youths of 20 be able to compete in the professions or in business against vigorous men still in their prime at 120, with a century of experience on which to draw? Frederick didn't spend too much time worrying about that, as he died of pneumonia just 8 years later. He's probably like, I just missed out on it. But it's interesting that the magic number of 150 continues to be a popular choice for our projected top-end longevity. In a 2021 study published in Nature magazine. Wait, is Nature magazine Nature, or is that a separate publication? Because if it's published in Nature, you're going to be like, well, that's very serious business. But Nature magazine could just be something that you buy at the newsagents. Researchers concluded that the maximum lifespan of humans living in a world with perfect conditions and zero stress is somewhere between 120 and 150. Yeah, this is that. Didn't they work this out with the telomeres? They were like, cool, because at some point you can't replicate your DNA again or something. It gets too short and then you die. And until they work out to extend those telomeres, I think 120 to 150 is the max. Some experts have suggested that we can never go beyond that figure, as even if we find a cure to all known diseases, we'll never be able to overcome the fundamental biological process of aging. We're still yet to witness a verified report of anyone managed to get past 122. Thanks to the wonders of modern medicine and sensible, healthy initiatives, life expectancy has certainly increased over the last century. You only have to go back to the 1960s to see a time when the average person had a life expectancy of just 52. 1960s. Are you having a laugh? Is that true? What? Which seems a bit brief compared to today's average global life expectancy of 72. Oh, okay, yeah, but we're including all the places where people are dying of cholera, and I'd have to think about those places. Not appropriate, Simon. But yeah, no, I'm hoping I'm going to live a bit more than 72. That 72 would be... I'd be quite disappointed if I only lived to 72, with my incredibly healthy lifestyle and all. It's active lifestyle. Definitely don't sit at a desk all day. But we're still not even halfway to the average life expectancy of 150, and the increase of lifespans has slowed down considerably over the last few years, suggesting that we may never get there. Still... I'm going to have my brain transferred to a machine, Danny. Still, Frederick's prediction did relate to the year 2030, so let's wait and see what happens over the next few years, assuming that we all live that long. Whilst Frederick was fretting over how young workers could possibly compete against experienced 120-year-old athletic veterans, he was simultaneously arguing in the very same book that it might not be such a problem because we wouldn't be working so hard anyway. Back in his day, the average worker clocked at least 60 hours a week, but Frederick foresaw a time when mechanization would lead to an average working week of perhaps just 16 hours, and that work itself would largely just involve monitoring the mighty machines. He's kind of right though, isn't he? We are working less than before, aren't we? Generally less hours. I am. Despite the reduction of hours, Frederick also believed that everyone would be much richer, proclaiming, as wealth increases, we shall be able to ride to hounds. We shall be able to ride to hounds. What do you mean? I think he was implying that this utopian future wouldn't be such great news for foxes. What are you talking about? I'm so confused. What does that mean? Is that some old-timey we'll all be able to ride to hounds, and everyone's like, pip, pip, yes, I know exactly what you mean. We'll all be wealthy, won't we all, Bean? Later on in 1966, Time magazine took the concept even further when they predicted that by the year 2000, most high-level executive jobs would be given to computers, whilst 90% of the population would enjoy a state-subsidized life of leisure, raking in an annual income of $40,000, or around $375,000 in today's money, all for doing precisely bugger all. I'm f***ing waiting! I've always found the idea of a universal basic income quite an interesting one, and it's been trialled with some success in forward-thinking countries such as Iran. Really? Whilst Wales have just launched a small pilot scheme in Scotland are giving it serious consideration. I am quite a fan of UBI. I think it's possibly, I don't know, the benefit system and stuff and subsidies and all of this is typically a little bit, in my opinion, getting controversial. I don't like to get political, but it's not really quite fair. I don't think it's a particularly fair system, whereas UBI is perfectly fair. It's everybody gets the same and it's enough to live off. If you want more than the average person, then you can work hard, but everyone kind of has enough. And I like that because I don't like people not having enough to live and to have be healthy and stuff like that. But I'm also for incentivizing work as well. So yeah, it's obviously complicated. I haven't thought about it very much, but generally I'm that sounds like a nice idea. I'm where are we going? I don't know where we get the money for it, but it's a nice idea.
No offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
It's a complicated topic, yes it is, but there are potential advantages in scrapping all the administration relating to means-based testing and just handing out free money to everyone, which can be pumped straight back into the economy. Yeah. The administration behind working out, and then there's the benefit fraud and all of this and investigating all of that is enormously expensive. If it was just you get this much, boom, done, all of that extra admin would just be gone. Which would be kind of nice. And whilst there would be far less incentive to go out and work to earn money, this could in turn lead to much higher wages for those less appealing jobs. Elon Musk approves of the idea, so make of that what you will. Elon Musk approves of UBI. I mean, we don't have to listen to Elon Musk just because he's super rich. But this is a money thing, isn't it? Okay, cool. I'm with Elon on this one. This kind of leisure society also dishes up some intriguing questions on our true purpose. At the moment, we spend our formative years getting equipped for a job and then most of the rest of our lives working hard in exchange for the money that we need to survive. Without the need for a job or money, what will it even mean in the future to be human? But maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves. Whilst wages have gone up and working hours have gone down over the last century, and whilst technology has forced some people out of jobs, we're still largely putting in the hours to pay our bills, around 35 hours a week in the UK and US, around 45 hours a week if you live in Turkey. Turkey's working hard, and I'm just thinking, I wonder what that figure is for France. Those foxes could sleep a little better at night for now, even if they should probably be out stealing chickens.
Hard work is bad for you. Hard work only good for making somebody else rich.
Flying refrigerators and dead letters. The Woman of the Year 1900 were given a tantalizing glimpse into the future courtesy of an article called What Might Happen in the Next 100 Years by John Alfred Watkins Jr. One thing they won't be getting is the right to vote. Am I right, Peter? Not all the women, mind, just the posh ones who read the Ladies' Home Journal in which the article was published. And John began his article by announcing that he had reached his futuristic conclusions after discussing the topic with the wisest and most careful men in our greatest institutions of science and learning. Ah, yes. Where should we go without the future of womanhood? Men. You'll notice that he didn't ask any women for their opinions in an article appearing in the Ladies' Home Journal. Of course he didn't. Women can't have opinions, or right. But they would probably just have come up with silly predictions about perfume-powered prams for kittens or something like that. Yes, Peter, yes! John wasn't even really a futurist himself. He was more of a railroad engineer. What the is going on? And museum curator. He's making predictions about the future, and he's a railroad engineer and also a museum curator. Okay. But it was nice of him to spare the time to share his gentlemanly thoughts, and just like Thomas Edison, a few of his predictions were bang on the money. Psychic. John managed to successfully predict, in a kind of roundabout way at least, the invention of central heating, air conditioning, television, digital color photography, and labor-saving devices in the kitchen, such as dishwashers, which must have been thrilling news for the ladies of the day. Yeah, I love dishwashers. The time in my life when I've lived somewhere without a dishwasher have been my most miserable years. I was trying to persuade. It didn't happen. It did happen in the end. But I was like, I love the idea of a double dishwasher where you have two dishwashers and one is dirty and one is clean. And then you're not spending your time unloading the dishwasher into the cupboards and loading it in. You're just like, cool, need a plate for dinner? Whoosh, out of the clean dishwasher. You use it into the dirty dishwasher, and then they swap overnight. You run one and then the other one. And then, and then also if you have guests around, you got two dishwashers. You do a double dishwasher. I'm renovating a house and we don't have a double dishwasher because my wife was like, that's absurd. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's genius. Why can't you appreciate me for the giant brain that I have? Come on. The double dishwasher. It's what we need. It's not my idea, but I appreciate it. But he made quite a few outlandish ones too. John predicted the death of the letters C, X, and Q from the English alphabet. He reckoned that these letters would be made obsolete because they were largely unnecessary. Looking at the bigger picture, he felt that English would become the most spoken language in the world by far, with Russian coming in at second place, but would probably have to simplify English a bit so that all the foreigners could get to grips with what is essentially a ridiculously difficult nonsensical language to learn. Danny, that's a nonsensical sentence, mate, and would have to start condensing complicated words into shorter words, as well as ditching those 3 whole useless letters from the alphabet. It wasn't such a weird idea at the time. The first 5-needle telegraphs only supported 20 letters, and so early users were already learning how to communicate without the letters C, X, Q, J, U, and Z. Who invents a device? And it's like, how many letters are in the English letter alphabet? 26. Well, let's make it with 20 keys. Idiots. And it could be argued that we're currently condensing words and removing unnecessary letters via the ever-evolving medium of text speak. But is text speak still a thing? Like, didn't we used to do that when we had to be like, you know, with the 9 letters and the T12, whatever that predictive was called. But now it's like we have little keyboards, so we're just like, oh, just the words, like LOL, lol. And that's about but I'm not going to use I'm not going to be permanently, just cutting out all the vowels, because come on, no one does that. Is that what the kids are doing nowadays? It's what kids were doing when I was a kid. I thought we got over that. But permanently phasing out whole letters of a century-old alphabet would probably have taken at least 100 years for everyone to get their head around, and the problem of agreeing on new spellings would have descended into a war of words like no other. Besides, whilst English may technically be the world's most spoken language as either first or a second language, it didn't quite become the universal language of Earth as envisioned by John. Russia barely scrapes into the top 10. And if nothing else, losing the letters C, X, and Q would have completely wrecked the QWERTY keyboard layout, given the Queen an identity crisis, and halted the development of X-ray spectacles. However, John's strangest prediction of all related to the concept of flying refrigerators, and it could be argued that he was kind of right on the right track with this one. Let's see where this goes. John foresaw a time when winged refrigerators would fly about over land and sea, delivering fruits and vegetables from around the world to provide year-round out-of-seasons goods. Well, he kind of nailed that one, didn't he? It's like refrigeration trucks and refrigerated planes and ships and all of that stuff. He also reckoned that everyone would give up home cooking, as ready-cooked meals would be instead delivered directly to our homes through pneumatic tubes. Well, he was wrong about the pneumatic tubes, but I get food delivered a lot. And we wouldn't even have to wash up after ourselves, as we'd just shove the dirty dishes back through the tubes for some other poor sucker to sort out. Yeah, I'm waiting for that. That's going to be a dream. The fact that John was even predicting refrigerators of any kind was fairly impressive, as the first home electric refrigerator wasn't invented until 1913 and would have become a common sight in a kitchen until around the 1940s. And he also deserves a bit of credit for predicting the concept of enjoying out-of-season produce grown on the other side of the world and the rise of the fast food industry. I know it's like the most basic. Sometimes it'll be like your December and you'll just be having some delicious raspberries. And you're like, how the f does this work? And this is not good for the environment, but these raspberries are f***ing delicious. It's just the distribution and delivery methods need a bit more thought. As impressed as I was by the procedure of getting a doner kebab and cigarettes delivered to my Rotherham hotel at 1 a.m, I would have been even more impressed if they'd arrived in a flying refrigerator hovering outside my hotel room window. Maybe next year. Thanks for watching. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to a new episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to bed. I'm sorry, Sam. We'll get there eventually.
One eternity later.